Hi, everyone. I hope you're all having a great week. Sometimes I like to pull out my personal art journal and just play. And this is sort of how this video started. In fact, I wasn't really sure I was even going to share this recording. I was making this little painting purely for myself. But then I started to play around and have some really neat ideas on different ways to use my watercolors and some different tools I had, and I thought maybe I could share this. And in fact, my husband is the one who encouraged me to share it because when he asked me about what I had created, I said, well, I don't know if it's really YouTube worthy, but I had a lot of fun. And so he said, well, that sounds like the perfect kind of video for you to share because it's what your channel's all about. So I'm really thankful he's in my life and that he provides me encouragement and words of wisdom when I need to hear them because sometimes I'm pretty hard on myself and I don't give myself a chance to really see how fun what it is I'm doing could be for someone else because I think I'm just too hard on myself. But anyway, as you probably saw, I started this process by just spritzing some water on my paper, and then I came in with a pipette and some clean water, and I just sort of like scribbled around. And now I'm coming in with some watercolor, and I'm just touching the areas where the water is on the paper, and that's helping to spread the color. And I'm really, really loving this effect. This is the kind of stuff that for me I find very relaxing and it's kind of exciting because the water is helping me move the paint on the paper and there's no real plan for this painting. I really set out with the intention to just play and have fun and experiment and try new things. And sometimes that's when the coolest things happen. So I decided I am going to share this recording with you guys, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you'll also feel inspired to pull out your art supplies and play along with me. Whether or not you're creating the same thing, it doesn't really matter. I'm trying a bunch of different things, and I'm hoping that you are going to give yourself permission to experiment and play and try, just about anything. If you see a new tool that you have never used, but you bought a while ago, and now's the perfect time to pull out that tool and give it a try. If you see something that you haven't used in a while, but that you used to love playing with, pull that out too. If you notice any new, like any instruments that may not necessarily be things you would have thought to create with in the past, pull those out as well. You are probably going to be able to create some really cool marks with them. So anyway, first things first, just put some water on your paper and start dropping some color in and see what magical, cool effects you can create. I let the first layer of colors and water dry, and then I'm coming in with some more water, and I'm also going to be adding some different colors into the background. I want this to be really abstract, really fun, and I'm just sort of not even really trying to create anything specific. As I said before, I'm just experimenting, and it's really fun to do this because as I'm doing this, I'm discovering some new ways to use my tools, and I'm also discovering new things that I can do with my paint. So I'm really loving that, and I'm really hoping that you're going to give yourself permission to do the same thing. It might be a bit hard to see exactly what it is I'm doing because I have to hold my brush pretty straight to do what I'm doing. I'm basically coming in with my brush and I'm just touching the very tip of the brush into those lines of water that I've added to my paper. And by just gently touching the water with my pigment filled brush tip, the pen the paint just seeps into the water and it spreads, and it's really really neat. And yeah, I'm having a lot of fun doing this. It's it feels a bit like being a kid and playing and just, trying different things, and I'm really really having so much fun doing this. So yeah, I'm not painting the lines. I'm just basically touching the tip of my bristles into the water lines, and the paint is spreading through the water. Water is such a magical thing, and I love watercolors. I love working with all kinds of water mediums because water feels like one of my allies when I'm working. It does some really cool things, and I love being able to play with it like that. Some of the things that the water does, I would never be able to do on my own. And if I were able to do it on my own, it would take me a long time. The water just does it very naturally. All I need to do is let go and let it do its thing. It's really magical. I'm having so much fun, in fact, that I've decided to come in with my pipette again and add some more water lines to the paper, and I'm going to add some more color. And I'm going to keep playing with this little new technique that I've sort of discovered within my play to add just some more interest to this little scribble of color. I don't yet know what it's going to become, but right now it's really fun, and I'm really excited for all the potential that lies on my paper. Now I'm starting to feel like I'm ready to call this background done. I'm really loving how the colors are mixing together, how the lines are playing together, and I'm ready to move on to trying something else. I'm loving the lines, I'm loving the colors, and I want to add just a little bit more brightness, but this time I'm going to do it using my brush and my spray bottle. So I'm coming in with some nickel azo yellow, a color I really love because it tends to stay very bright regardless of whether it's dry or wet. And so I think it's the perfect addition to this mix of colors, and I think it's going to blend really well with what's already there. All right, I'm starting to feel ready to call this background done, and I'm going to be moving on to letting this dry and then adding some other elements with my creative play. Since I love circles, I'm using my circle guide sort of as a little bit of a viewfinder, and I'm picking areas in my background that I really love and want to draw attention to, and I'm going to just draw a circle around that area, and then I'll use the concept of negative versus positive space to draw attention to those circles. So first I'm coming in with a very light wash of phthalo turquoise, and I'm glazing the area around the circles. So glazing means I'm not fully covering up. I'm just creating like a translucent wash of color over the background. And it's really fun to do this because when you do this, you also see what's left in the background. So I'm adding this color, and because the color underneath was dry, it is not fully blending with the color that I'm adding. It is simply being covered slightly in a translucent way so that you can still see what's underneath. And I really like this. I love practicing these types of skills because they can be very useful when working with watercolors or any type of media, art media. So this is, a fun way to sort of push the background back and let the shapes that I want to draw attention to get pulled more to the forefront. Now, in this case, because the background is very busy, my glaze is helping to push the background back a little bit, but it's not working as well at doing this as I would like it to. So I think I'm going to do something else with this afterwards. But I am loving this glaze, and I'm loving the fact that I can still see some of what's underneath. So that's not necessarily something I'm keeping for this painting, but it's definitely something I could do in another painting. And that's part of why it's fun to play and experiment with different techniques like this, because it gives you an idea of the types of things that you love to do and that you'd like to try again in different paintings. So this glazing is definitely something I'm going to carry with me for other painting projects. I let my glaze of phthalo turquoise dry, and now I'm coming in and adding some more circles. I want to add some value contrast at this point. I love the colors that are in the background of the painting. I love the glaze that I added, but the colors are very much on the same value level. And so that means that nothing is really standing out right now. So I need to draw more attention to my circles if I want them to be the focal point of my painting. So I'm going to add some dark value around my circles, and then I'll see how I'm feeling about how things are looking. And I will certainly want to play and add some more elements. But yeah, I'm having lots and lots of fun. And um, it's really neat to have started this little project and not really have known where it was going to be heading. And to see it start to move in a certain direction is really exciting for me. And yes, adding this dark value of color around my circles is really going to make them pop. So I'm feeling very excited about doing this. I'm still working with sort of a glazing technique. The color underneath is slightly visible, but because the color is darker, what's underneath is not as visible. So for me, this is great. I want to make sure that I make these circles pop, and adding this dark color is definitely going to do that. So yay for contrast. I'm really loving the addition of the dark color to help my circles pop some more. But the background is still very busy, and because I only covered it with a glaze, it's still catching too much attention. So I'm going to come in with a wash of gesso and water. So it's going to be a light wash of gesso. And I like working with gesso because once I've added it onto the paper, and it's going to dry and it's not going to be soluble anymore. So you're still going to slightly see what's underneath, but it's going to really subdue the background, and the colors are still gonna show through slightly underneath because it's not an opaque wash of gesso. I watered it down, and so it's really creating like a light wash of gesso. So you're still gonna see what's underneath, which I want because I did like that background. It was just a little bit too busy, so I need to subdue it, and I think this is the perfect way to do it. I love working with gesso in my paintings, and when I add it, I try to make sure that it's at a point in my painting process where I'm okay with the gesso drying to become something that won't be mutable. So once the gesso dries, I'm not going to be able to do anything different with that. I can add a little bit of watercolor over it, but it won't um, work the same way anymore as it would with the watercolor paper. If I had decided to work with gouache, white gouache, this would have been a possibility as well. But what I have noticed in the past is when I add white gouache over a surface like this, if I come back in with watercolors, the gouache tends to dissolve a little bit and then it mixes with my watercolors. And I don't tend to like that as much, but that's just a matter of preference for me. And that's why it's important for all of us to experiment and try doing different things and see what speaks to us. And for me, working with the gesso in this way, I find um, is really helpful. And it's one of the tools that I love to work with watercolors because it can help to sort of subdue colors in a background when, you know, if you're working with something and you're like, oh my gosh, that's a little bit too busy for me, and I'd like to really calm it down. Coming in with a wash of gesso can really help to do that. And I love the fact that the gesso, this wash of gesso, is not completely covering what's in the background in an opaque way. You can still see it, you can still see the background slightly underneath, and I like that. So for me, this is the way to go. And I love having these moments where I experiment with using these different techniques because sometimes if I'm working on another painting and I get to a point where I'm not 100% sure what to do next because I've played using my different tools and techniques in other projects before. Sometimes that's what will help get me unstuck. I'll remember having tried something in another painting process and I can pull out that technique again and help me get unstuck. So I am really happy that I decided to add the gesso. It's one of the things that I do every once in a while in a painting, and it helps kind of get me to the next step. And yay for gesso. I like seriously, it's a tool that I never thought I would use quite as much with watercolors, but I tend to pull it out fairly frequently, and I find it very, very helpful. I discovered ruling pens online a while ago and I bought myself some and I have yet to use them. And I figure, you know what? I'm experimenting and playing. This is the perfect time for me to finally pull out my ruling pen and to experiment with it so that I can learn how to use it for future painting processes. It's a really neat tool because you can load the ruling pen with ink or with watercolor and you can create lines or write with your pen using your ruling pen using your watercolors or your ink or whatever. It's really, really neat. But I have never tried this before, so I'm not 100% sure how it's going to go. And at the same time, it's, like I said, the perfect time for me to give it a try. So we will see how this is going to work out. But one of the things that drew me to buying a ruling pens is the fact that I would potentially be able to create really straight lines with this tool using a ruler and my ruling pen. So I'm giving it a try and ooh, oh my gosh, that's pretty neat. I am very pleasantly surprised at how I was able to draw a very straight line using this tool and some watercolor. And of course, I had to try it with some star gold because this is the reason I wanted to buy the ruling pen in the first place. I wanted to be able to use my star gold in a different way. So you add the watercolor to the tip using a brush like I was showing before, and voila, there you have it. You can create some really, really straight lines, lines much straighter than I could create using a brush. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to buy this tool. It's kind of neat. It does take a fair amount of watercolor and you know, I've added quite a few lines so far and I haven't yet had to load it. So that's really pretty awesome. Of course, this is my very first time playing with a ruling pen, so it's, like I said, the perfect type of project to use a new tool in because I'm experimenting and playing, and I'm not really feeling overly attached to anything that's on my paper in this journal because this is all about experimentation. And so I am just coming in and I'm like fixing whatever little blobs of watercolor were left by the ruling pen because, again, I'm just learning how to use this tool. But really, I'm super excited with what I can do with it. And so I was able to create some really straight lines. They didn't leave too much of a mess, and I was able to correct, quote unquote, correct my my little mess um, by just brushing off the paint. And now I'm learning how to use this new tool, and I know that in future projects I'll be able to use it again, and I'll know more how it works and what I can expect from it. So, yay. Yeah, I'm really excited. I saw someone using it online. I forget where I saw them using it. I think it must have been on a YouTube video or something. And I don't know why. I maybe it was for calligraphy. Anyway, I don't remember why, but I thought, you know what? This tool looks like it could be a really cool tool to use even with watercolors. So I'm super happy I bought it, and um, I can see myself definitely playing more with it in future projects. Here I reloaded the ruling pen with some more watercolor, and the watercolor had a lot of water in it. So it made a little bit of a messier line, but again, this is my journal. I'm here to play and experiment. So I'm just gonna take my ruler and I'm gonna spread that paint. I've done that in other videos. I actually kind of think it's a bit of a cool effect. Sometimes it's just good to roll with the flow of whatever it is that shows up on your paper. So yeah, I was trying to create a straight line. I had too much water in my pigment, my watercolor pigment, and in the ruling pen, and then it came out as a much thicker line and created a little bit of a mess, but I decided to make that work for me. So by using the ruler, I was able to sort of smush that line and push the paint out, and I think it created a bit of a cool effect. So yeah, important to be able to sort of roll with what happens and use the different things that show up in our paintings to our advantage. Since I'm in full experimentation mode, let's see what else I can do with this rolling pen. I'm really having fun using it, and yeah, it's kind of exciting to play with a new tool that I can use with my watercolors. So I know I can make straight lines using a ruler, and I wonder how well it would work in, writing or scribbling. And it seems like it would work extremely well. I don't really know if you can see a whole lot of what it is I'm doing, but yeah, it's definitely working well. Now, is this the best thing I could have done in the middle of my circles? I'm not sure. The circles or the interior of the circles was already pretty busy, but I'm experimenting. I'm playing. I'm not trying to create a masterpiece. I'm trying to discover how I can use my tools, how I can use different skills in my painting projects. And this is definitely the time to be doing something like this. And as I'm going along, even if I am discovering that maybe I would have preferred not to do the squiggly lines with the star gold inside my circles, I now know that moving forward, if I use these techniques again, I probably won't do that. I'll use these squiggly lines somewhere else. But I know I can make them, and I know I can make them with my ruling pen. So that's a win-win for me. Now I'm going to move on to adding some more dark value contrast using some of my India ink, and I'm gonna use some bottle caps and um, different types of containers. Here I'm using an old Play-Doh container, and I'm going in and I'm gonna add some more darkness in around my circles because I feel like the dark color I added was great, but it needs a little bit more darkness, and so I'm doing that. And using ink, of course, once the ink dries, it is not going anywhere. So you have to feel ready to commit to this type of mark. But I am at that point. I love, the different things that I've tried in my little experiment so far. And I feel ready to commit to adding a little bit more dark value. So I'm coming in and sort of like pre-measuring the caps that I have to see if they fit any of the circles that I have in there. And yeah, again, just looking around my studio and seeing what else I can use to create different marks in this little paint experimentation project. And I think this is the right way to go. So the dark ink around the circles is definitely helping to make them pop more. Now I'm coming in with my fine tip black pen and I'm adding a few more ink details in the background. I think the details are nice and they are definitely adding something to the background, which was looking pretty plain at this point, but I don't know that it's enough. So I'm gonna give this some thought and I'll probably come in and add something else as I go along. But for now, I'm happy working with the vertical lines. They're a very simple mark and they usually, for me, are quite effective and I really like them and they're very easy and that's a huge thing for me. The easier the better. And so I'm enjoying creating these vertical lines and I'll see what else comes to mind as I go along. I definitely want some more dark um, elements in the background and little paint splatters. They're the way to go. They're super simple and they'll add exactly that element that I find is missing in the painting. I found a little triangular looking tube in some of my things that I saved, and I decided to use it also as a stamp, and that was the last element I added to this painting. And it's finished. It was an experiment and full of fun. I tried a bunch of different things, and the whole entire thing to me was a huge success because not only did I have fun, but I discovered how to use new tools. I discovered how to use old tools, and I discovered how to create a new set of different marks using techniques I'd never thought to use before. So that is the value of using clay like this, and I hope you'll feel inspired to try it as well. Thank you for making the time to join me on my creative journey. I hope you have a wonderful week and happy creating!